Hang on just a second now.
You're okay.
I got you on this here. Let me edit this one out real quick. Uh,
Yeah, this
is
whole
all
thing, and I've had to learn
well.
technology that I
That's the way that I am. I am the world's worst when it comes to any kind of technology. It's not that don't want to know how to do things. I just don't want to learn how to do them anymore. So,
that's exactly it.
so I think we're good now. Whenever you want to get started.
Okay, take 2. Welcome back to the BCA podcast, and, as we get started, as a young hunter in the '80s and '90s, there were 3 men who made their way onto my Mount Rushmore of hunters, Larry Weishuhn, Jim Zumbo, and Jim Shockey. And when we started this podcast about a year ago, never in my wildest dreams did I think I would ever have a chance to interview any one of these national treasures. But I'm here to say dreams do come true. And so, welcome to the BCA podcast, Mr. Whitetail himself, Larry Weishuhn.
Mike, thank you so very much. And to be included with those two other guys, both have been friends for many, many years. Jim and I go back to when he first got into the industry, talking about Shockey, and then
Uh-huh.
Zumbo and I have been friends we've lost count of the number of years, and he's truly one of my best friends. So to be in the company of those two guys, I feel truly honored. Thank you.
You're welcome. They are both just from the very beginning have been people that I have followed. I had a chance to meet Jim Zumbo at a show one time and had him autograph a couple cookbooks for me, and it was
Oh, yes.
my dad's prized possession, and he just handed it down to my daughter. She's so thrilled to have that. So, well,
Well, he certainly is a great cook, I can tell you that. I've shared camps with him numerous times and look forward to the next opportunity as well too, because that guy knows how to cook.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think I caught one of your podcasts. You were talking about fish, right? Smoked fish.
Yes.
And you were saying that you're not a huge fan of smoked fish, but he had come up with a recipe that was really good. So
He really has. He says, as you mentioned, as far as I'm concerned, he truly is a national treasure.
yeah, yeah. Well, Larry, I have followed you, as I said, for years and years, and there's no way to encompass your life's experiences in a in a 45-minute, hour, day long podcast. And so I don't think people necessarily want to listen to me. They want to hear some of your stories. So I'll just ask questions and let you talk. So if
Please
that
do.
works. Okay. So give us, there's a lot of these new hunters and new people coming up who might not even know the legend of who you are. So how did you get started? Where did you grow up? How did you get into the outdoors?
I grew up in the outdoors. I grew up out in the country in a little German-speaking community called Zimmerzeit, which is kind of 90 miles, or was about 90 miles west of Houston here in Texas. My
Huh?
family's been there for a very long time. And to be very open about it, I could hardly speak English until I started school because all the folks, my parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and the people that lived around us, they all spoke German and Low German. So going to school was to be very honest with you about a lot of things there is I grew up fishing and hunting pretty much every day. So when I was forced to go to school, I thought I'd been forced to hell, to be very open with you. I thought I'd gone to hell because what do you mean I'm going to have to go to school and do these things? I want to be out in the outdoors. So that's really kind of where it started. I started hunting well before memory recalls, to be
Mhm.
very open with you there as well too. And I always loved to read, and as soon as I could, before that, my mom occasionally would read to me from the pages of Outdoor Life and Field and Stream and Sports and Field, and saw the pictures and dreamed of someday as a little bitty kid, hoping that I'd be able to maybe at least take a white-tailed deer, or maybe get to see it and hear an elk kind of thing. And was very fortunate that having grown up in the country with very supportive parents and got married relatively quickly out of high school to my high school sweetheart. And came from a hunting and a fishing family as well. We're both her mom and dad, like my mom and dad both hunted and fished, and so I was at the right place at the right time when it came to with the things having to do with whitetail deer. Uh, I knew that if I was going to do what I wanted to do, I'd have to have a degree. And Texas A&M University at the time was the place for anybody that was wanting or interested in wildlife to go to. And so I was able to, after 2 years at a junior college, because my dad was very ill and was in hospital for a long time. We were in the chicken business, the cattle business, the hog business, and so I kind of took care of things during those first 2 years when I normally would have been at A&M to get to that point, and then got to A&M and hated school all my life, but knew that I was gonna have to go through it to do it, and was fortunate as a senior to be hired onto the Texas Wildlife Disease Project, which
Mm.
was an interagency contract between Texas Parks and Wildlife Department and the Department of Veterinary Pathology there at Texas A&M, and we were involved in all kinds of research, dealing with everything from outers to white-tailed deer to mule deer to pronghorn to desert bighorn sheep and a lot of the exotics and elk and things like that. And went from there to working statewide as a wildlife biologist under that contract. Then for TPWD, the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, the last 5 years I was there with them, I set up management programs all over South Texas relative to dealing with landowners and hunters. But
Wow.
along through all that same time frame, I always loved to read and loved to learn. And to me, every day is an opportunity to learn something new. And so I was at the right place at the right time, got to know some of the right people because back then whitetail deer was kind of in its infancy the way that we know it these days. And a guy by the name of John Wooders started writing about hunting mature bucks, and Jerry Smith, the photographer, started taking photographs of what mature bucks look like. Up to that time, every magazine article that you picked up, pretty much Lenny Lee LaRue had the photographs. And unfortunately, Lenny never had a chance to photograph anything older than about a 2-year-old deer because of where he was from up there in the Northeast. And so when you get right down to it, I really credit uh, both Wooders and Jerry Smith for really starting the interest that we have in white-tailed deer that we have these days. And they were friends and got to work with them. We did some videos together during that time frame and did one called Whitetails Judging Trophies, which was about how to get an estimate on the age of a deer and estimate the size of the antlers and do all that in about 5 seconds. And, got to know the right people, got to love to hunt, and it's kind of
Wow.
where it kind of got started.
Oh, and Larry, it's funny, I always thought of you as being on the front end of a lot of that stuff. So I bought and still have your hunting mature bucks,
Oh, love it.
and I've
Yes.
got it in 95 when it came out.
Yes,
And
sir.
I just like, I had never heard most of the stuff in there. Like it was, I just ate it up. And then being from the area of Charlie Alsheimer, is from our
Oh my
area.
gosh, yes. Charlie was a dear friend.
So the photography that he put forth, and we had him at dinners and different things like that. The pictures and what you were talking about, like it was fitting pieces of a puzzle together for me. It was just incredible. And I really, going back and reading this again, I think you were on the forefront of aging deer on the hoof and thinking about calibers and the story that sticks out is your promise to yourself never to shoot uh, an immature buck again. And like those kinds of things have played in my mind for almost 30 years. And um, it's funny to hear you talking about going to college at A&M and working in those programs, and it was around even back then. It's amazing to me because it was
Well,
all new to me in the 90s.
it was to us too, and that's one of the great things. Like I said, I came along at that very right time when all this was really in its infancy, and we did a lot of work on antler development and nutrition, and of course, there's nutrition related to disease. A healthy animal produces a big body, and a healthy animal, and if they're growing antlers, will grow bigger antlers as well too. And
Yeah.
of course, we knew about the age factor, and so then we started seriously looking at Well, how can you tell? Yeah, not all big bucks or big antlered bucks are old. There's some that are younger and maybe some ought to be left. So we started to be looking at a lot of that kind of thing, and that's kind of where we came up with the aging type of thing of somebody to be able to look at a deer and get an approximate age of it. The difficult side of that is a lot of the people that saw those tapes or read the articles that we did, and during that time I did a bunch of stuff for the NRA as well too, is
Mhm.
that they had never had the opportunity to see a mature deer.
Yeah.
And as people became more attuned to letting some deer grow into that at least that 2, 3, 4-year-old age class, well, finally now they did have the opportunity to see some deer, and that's kind of where we were at that point. Is okay if it's a pretty good deer, and you look at his body and look at his face and his neck, kind of forget about his antlers and go by that, then make a decision as to whether or not you want to harvest that deer or give him another opportunity for the chance of getting a year older.
Yeah. 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 That's it is all. We kind of go by the policy on our property that, if you've never taken a deer, it's all fair game. After
Amen.
that, after that, we're looking for belly sag and enlarged necks, shorter looking legs. We pull the jawbone on every deer, and
Perfect.
so we're trying. It's tough with neighbors, but we're trying. So
It is, but one of the things that we learned over the years, and of course here in Texas, we're very fortunate. We have a lot of private land,
yeah,
and the unfortunate side of that is that land ownership per individual is probably shrinking quite a bit because a lot of the ranches have been either divided by family as they're being passed on or then sold. But one of the things that we learned is that a lot of places we can get 3 or 4 or 5 people together, maybe with depending on what that acreage size is, it could be relatively small, and set them up like they're all in the same management program where each one of the properties is managed like a pasture on a big ranch. And as a result of that, the neighbors start saying, wait a minute, you know, I've never seen bucks like this before. And so they start talking to their neighbors. Next thing you know, they're brought into the fold, and the
yeah,
next ones are brought into the fold. So, there are things that can be done, particularly through those cooperative type things.
sure, sure. Yeah, that's a lot of. I mean, it's almost NDA basically is the same kind of
Right.
thing, creating those cooperatives. So yeah. You had, I know life has always brought change, but you had 2 major changes. There was, one when going from the public or from government agencies into private industry or private sector, and then, when you jumped, or should I say crashed into the television and communication sector. Can you share a little bit about those 2 jumps?
Absolutely. Going back, I'd always wanted to be a wildlife biologist, and I was very fortunate to get to do a lot of different things in Texas, particularly working statewide and working with game wardens and working with landowners and all those kind of things. In the last 5 years that I was with the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, I set up management programs all over South Texas, and that included everything from the ground on up, including the livestock, and spent 6, 7 months out of the year doing helicopter game surveys.
Hmm,
And I got a call one morning. I was very fortunate in being able to set up a lot of programs and got a decent following amongst the landowners. And I got a call one morning from the Austin headquarters saying, "Hey, Larry, guess what? We have created a position for you in the Austin office. We want to move you to Austin to the headquarters building." And I go, "Oh my gosh, I am so honored. I can't believe this." I hung the phone up, called my wife, and I said, "Honey, I'm going to quit the state." And she goes, "What?" She says, "I can't believe this. Why would you want to do that?" And I said, "Well, I don't want to spend the rest of my career, which is now a long time ago when this call came, in an office." And I said, I want to stay in the field. And if I stay with TPWD, I'll be stuck in an office somewhere the rest of my career. That, and along about the same time when that was going on, is I'd always loved to write, and I'd been doing a decent amount of writing. And during that time frame, the policy of the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department was if you write anything, you do it for our magazine and for nobody else, or for technical publications or whatever. And I'd been doing some occasional publications articles and that kind of thing, and using a variety of aliases. So the combination of being told that I had a position waiting for me in a headquarters building, and the fact that they really didn't want me writing, and I wanted to do a whole lot more writing. That's what really kind of led to my leaving the state employment. But at the same time, I'd worked with so many of the different ranches, and they wanted more work done than what I could do as a TPWD biologist. So we immediately started our own consulting company, and at the same time, when all that was going on, I'd already gotten to know John Wooders and Jerry Smith and Craig
Mhm.
Boddington and Jay Wayne Fears and Zumbo and several other guys through the work that I'd done with whitetail deer, including with did a lot of stuff during those early years too with Bill Jordan and David Blanton
Mm.
and Michael Waddell. When Michael first came on board, was a cameraman and was mostly my cameraman when we were doing those kind of things. So I'd gotten integrated into all that kind of thing, doing videos that we were doing. And so when I left the state, I established my own management programs kind of thing, or as a consulting biologist, and then wrote for a lot of publications on staff with deer and deer hunting with Charlie. You
Mhm.
mentioned Charlie a while ago, Charlie Alsheimer, and Pat Durkin was the editor then, and Richard Smith was on board up in the North Country, and we just had an absolutely fantastic staff in there. And I was doing articles for a lot of other publications. Became hunting editor for oh gosh, for Sporting Classics. I mean for I was with Sporting Classics for a while too, but with Shooting Times and
Mhm.
a bunch of the other publications as well. And I with the television thing, I could see advertising dollars being siphoned from print media.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I'd done my first TV show back in 1970. Texas A&M University had a TV station, and a guy by the name of Larry Godfrey was a local writer for the Bryan Daily Eagle,
Wow.
and I did some work with Larry when he had that TV show. So when I started seeing all this dollars being siphoned off, and then I was serving as a guest on some of the shows, that's when we jumped off and really started and created the first show that I had, which was called Hunting the World, which was
Yep.
on the Outdoor Channel many, many years ago. And from that, we developed into all kinds of other shows. Did a lot of stuff with Realtree. I was on the Redhead Pro Hunting team with Bob Folkrod, Jerry Martin, and Walter Parrott and I. When Johnny just had the one store in Springfield. And the interesting thing there is during those early years like that, Johnny would send every hunting product to us to try, and if we approved it, it got put in the store. If it didn't, it didn't get put in the store. So, got to do and got to meet so many great people during that time frame, and the TV thing was kind of a natural. As a little bitty kid, I was absolutely scared to death to get up in front of people, but somehow or another I worked through that, and that was a big part of it that allowed me to do some of the early things I did with TV because of what we were doing with whitetail deer and some of the other game species. Is that I didn't mind getting in front of a camera, didn't a microphone didn't bother me, or a crowd didn't bother me, and
Mhm.
so a lot of times it was more that I think that I got called upon to serve as a guest or as a co-host or whatever than what I knew about deer, because knowing about deer is an ongoing process. It is a daily, every time you go to the field, learning process. So I
Yeah.
get tickled every once in a while. I'll see somebody, hear somebody, and they're kind of spouting that they know a lot about deer. Boy, are they in for a surprise. Because I tell you, anytime we're dealing with I mean, immature deer is one thing. Mature deer, they're a totally different animal, and every time you
Yeah.
think you got one figured out, he's going to teach you a new lesson. So
Wow.
all that kind of figured into it, along the way. Plus the love of hunting and uh, to I really enjoy and love people. I truly do. And during the years when I was there at A&M for as a working there out of A&M with the Department of Veterinary Pathology, I counseled a lot of students, particularly those in wildlife. And those guys had come to me, guys, and then finally we admitted women to Texas A&M University for the first time ever back in that time frame. And they would, I knew some of the lead professors there, and they would say, "Hey, why don't you go talk to Larry?" And they would ask all kinds of questions. Of course, I'd ask them questions. I said, "Why do you want to be in wildlife?" And they go, "Well, I love the outdoors. I love to hunt and fish, and I don't like people." I said, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa.
Oh,
What'd you say? I don't like people?" I said, "Let's call your advisor and get your major changed." And I said, "Because here's the deal. Wildlife is 95 to 99% people, and then that 5 to 1% wildlife." I said, "You've got to
mhm.
love people. You've got to be willing to spend time visiting, listening, learning, and being able to communicate to them what your feelings are as far as wildlife is concerned."
Yeah, yeah. My daughter, oldest daughter, is finding that out now. She's a forester. She went through um, ESF, the Environmental School of Forestry, and the Ranger School here in New York. And she spends a lot of time in her office and a lot of time in the woods, but is not getting a lot of time with people. And she craves people, and so
That's good.
it's an interest. Yeah, it's good. It's really good. So there was an article I read that talked about you making the switch from going into communication. You talked about a helicopter crash, and was it what was that? What was that all about?
Oh, as I mentioned, we developed a technique using helicopters to do game surveys in the brush country part of South Texas, particularly
Okay,
because they're the maybe the highest bushes are like 20 feet. Most of them are like 10 to, there's an occasional mesquite tree that may be 30 feet tall. So we would do a tremendous number of helicopter surveys on individual ranches where basically starting about the middle of August, about the time, yeah, usually about the middle of August, I would crawl in a helicopter and we would fly ranches every single day until the beginning of the hunting season, and then pick up the last part of hunting season and in December and fly really until about the middle of March because that's when our bucks started dropping their antlers. So I was
hmm,
spending literally thousands of hours in a helicopter, and during those years, which I did that for about 25 years, and I loved it because I could get in a helicopter and learn more about a chunk of country, everything having to do from brush to water to all the other types of vegetation, the predators, the game animals, the non-game animals. I could learn more in an hour or two in a helicopter than I could if I'd spent months on the ground. So we spent so much time doing helicopter surveys. Well, during that time frame, helicopters aren't meant to fly. I mean, they're a true anomaly when you get right down to it. And we were always flying maybe at a height of about 40 feet off the ground at the very most. If the
wow.
brush is really thick, we picked up a little bit. And if it's not, we, it depending on how far we could see on either way and brush density. And then same thing having to do with speed. Helicopter survey is an art. It's not a science as so many try to make it these days. And an art is taking regimens from a whole bunch of different sciences and combining them to create something. And basically that's what we did with the helicopter. But during those times, I ended up having being involved in 13 helicopter crashes into where we hit,
13.
yes, sir, to where we hit the ground pretty darn hard, and was very fortunate to either walk or hobble away from all of them.
Wow.
And some of them were more interesting than others. And honestly, the last one that we had, which was on a huge ranch that I was working with at the time, we hit really hard. And from what they tell me, I'll tell a story some other time. We'll come back and talk just about helicopter crashes one of these days if you want to, and how it relates to wildlife management. But anyway, I ended up in the hospital and got out of the hospital, and I still had time to do one or two more game surveys that year. And so I told this friend of mine who occasionally helped me when we had like two or three, or at least two different surveys scheduled the same day. And I said, "Look," I said, "I'm going to go up. I'm going to fly for an hour, and when that hour is over with, you're going to take over and do it." And basically, since that time, I went up for an hour, flew back, got Andy to get in the helicopter, and he finished the survey for me. And that was years ago. And the only time I've really been in a helicopter since then has been down in New Zealand when we've been down there flying up to the high country to go hunt tar, chamois. And I've done a couple of game surveys since then, where we
Mhm.
actually did a survey here in Texas. But I figured after the 13th crash, the good Lord had warned me enough and says, okay, you dummy, if you're going to keep at this, you probably have to pay the true consequences next time. So I appreciate the fact that the good Lord gave me that many opportunities, because to be very open
Yeah.
about it, I love doing the surveys. It's simply because of how much you could learn and what you could see. It was like a huge, loud magic carpet. Now, I, I, I don't know where we are in the legality of some of the things right now dealing with drones, but I've been visiting with a couple of guys who are doing research
Mhm. Oh,
using drones. We did helicopter, but doing it with an unmanned situation. And they've got these particular two guys I'm talking about. They have got special permits and dispensations and all that other kind of stuff from the state game departments to actually do the research to see how this might pan out in the future. So it's interesting having come from a time frame when we were using helicopters. Now we're the possibility of using the drones to do basically the same thing and to get great surveys and great information, not only on the deer population, but the predator population, the bird population, and to be able to really get a good look at the vegetation that's there, and livestock operations and all those other kind of things that are forestry practices, all those other things that play into setting up or establishing and maintaining a really good management program to produce a healthy deer herd and a healthy habitat.
yeah. Wow. So, I'm gonna shift gears on you because
Okay.
you mentioned helicopters in New Zealand.
Yes, sir.
Um, so you have hunted all over the world.
Not yet, but I've been very fortunate. I've had the opportunity to hunt all but one of the continents, and that's being Antarctica. And I'm
Okay.
not enthralled or all that interested in spending time down there looking at penguins. But other than that, I've been very fortunate. I've spent less time probably in some parts of South Africa. I'm sorry, South America and Asia. Although I've hunted both those places, but been to Africa many times. Love New Zealand. Been there several times, and love the European thing that how with the great respect that they show the animals and the hunters. Something I think we kind of fall short on sometime here in North America. Although, as more and more people have become interested again in food and seeing that animal as a for the resource that it really is, I think we're starting to see some of that respect return that we or show up that maybe we kind of never really had or kind of lost a few years ago.
Mhm, mhm.
But Europe is fantastic. New Zealand, yes, we were rather the beauty of their helicopters. Those guys are phenomenal pilots, and
Yeah.
a lot of times they were picking us up down at a base camp and then carrying us up to the top, and we'd either hunt our way down or set up a camp up there, and then they'd come back and get us. And it sure cut off a lot of taking deep breaths, trying to go up or down, or trying to catch
That's
breath so you can do a deep breath knot.
yeah, yeah. I know not to ask what your favorite hunt was because that's
Oh,
always
I'll
the
I'll tell
next
you
one.
very quickly what my favorite hunt is. It's the next one I'm going on,
That's right.
and it
That
makes no
that
difference what that is. Uh, I've been fortunate on the other side. Every hunt I've ever been on has been very special, whether there's been an animal taken or not, and there have been numerous where they're every bit is enjoyable, particularly looking back now, and but we're not taking animal. Uh, and again, part of that has so much to do with the overall thing of the hunt. As far as I'm concerned, it's the country that you're in, it's the people that you're with, it's the circumstances involved with that hunt. And I've been on hunts where the really the only thing that we saw were birds, but my gosh, they
Mm,
were beautiful birds. The terrain was
yeah,
absolutely gorgeous as well too. So to me, the success of a hunt has really little to do with the size of the animal, or in many instances, even if you happen to take an animal or not.
yeah, yeah. It's the people you're with, and it's the opportunity to just observe what's around you, and Yeah, it's all part of that makes up a great hunt.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
But there are some animals that are really fun to hunt. To me, I keep coming back to white-tailed deer because they're everywhere in North America. We're so very blessed. We live in the golden age of whitetail, as far as I'm concerned. The
Mhm.
last few years that we've had, and the next several years as well too, we've got more white-tailed deer. We've got better quality in terms of the health of the animal and the size of the animal, and more opportunities than we've had in many years past. And that's been kind of building to where we are now since probably about late 1900s, the past century, the 1990s through the present sort of thing, as people became more and more aware of white-tailed deer and the needs of white-tailed deer in terms of habitat and what it takes to produce going back to the healthy animal kind of thing. We live
Yeah.
in the best times when it get right down to it with white-tailed deer, and the beauty of it is, kind of as I mentioned a while ago, we've got not an abundance everywhere, but in almost everywhere these days, there are at least a few mature animals, and uh, as I mentioned, there's a difference. Years ago, I had several bucks that we had tagged, and I'll use this kind of an example. Until the time that those bucks in our part of the country, they matured 4 years old. Up in your part of the country, they matured about three because that's when all their long bones are grown and all those kind of things. And down in this part of the country, I've seen bucks that we had tagged on open country that were just the biggest doofus you can ever imagine. You'd find them all day long. You could find them anywhere you went to as a whole. When they got to be 4 years of age and they're growing antlers, it looks like they walk up to a pond or a water source and look down in that pond as they're drinking water, and all of a sudden they realize they got a much bigger set of antlers on their head, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, you can just see them change and everything how they do. It's like, oh my God, they start backing up, and they become much more nocturnal, and they become such an interesting animal to pursue and to match wits with.
Mhm.
There's just a totally difference there with white-tailed deer, particularly once they get to be that mature age. Years ago, I had several ranches I was working with, and a lot of them become totally nocturnal. Years ago, I had several ranches I was working with, and on one of these ranches, they were doing everything right in terms of getting bucks in some older age, making sure there was natural vegetation and available on a day-to-day basis, not a seasonal basis, and all those kind of things. And there were some really big bucks on that place, antler-wise, were like from 4 to maybe 7 years of age, and yet they were not seeing them. They came to me, and I'd tell them about the bucks that we'd seen during the surveys, and they go, "You're a liar. Those bucks don't exist here. We hunt every day. We can't see them." So generally, generally about in November, I'd call the local game warden, and who I most times knew, and I said, "Would you mind coming out to such and such a ranch?" I said, "We want to take a spotlight out tonight." This go had trail camera pig and all that, and I said, "I want to show these guys what's available." He said, so because they don't believe what kind of deer, and we take them out, and generally from the hours of about midnight to about 3 o'clock in the morning, I would show them bucks that they had no earthly idea even existed on that property.
Wow.
And I tell them, I said, "Guys, I can tell you how to grow a big deer. I can't tell you always how to hunt that big deer, but I can tell you this, that a lot of times those really old mature deer that with their biggest antlers, they a lot of times have just enough testosterone to put them through the antler cycle. They're not active breeders. Survivability is their key, even during the time when the rut's going on." And I
Mm.
said, the thing about that is, I said, a lot of times those kind of deer have a tendency to move when you're not in the field. And I said, most of you guys are hunting until about 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. You go home and have breakfast, or go to camp and have breakfast. You talk about lamenting the fact that you're not seeing anything. I said, you'll sit around there and talk about football or tell hunting stories until about 2 or 3 o'clock. And I said, about 3 o'clock, you're back on the stand, you don't see anything that afternoon. I said, when do you think those deer are moving? They're moving when you're not there. I said, all you've done is a dear friend of mine, Dick Idle, years ago. I hadn't talked to Dick a long time. Dick did a lot of writing about patterning whitetails.
Yeah.
Well, when we were trying to pattern a lot of those particular really big antlered, very wary bucks, they were patterning us as well too. So when were
Yeah.
they moving? They were moving during the middle part of the day when nobody was there. And they do
Hmm.
that particularly naturally from my years of hunting and spending in the field when there is no moon at night or when there's a full moon at night. If you got a full moon running all night long, to me, I've seen and taken my biggest bucks during from about 11 to about 1:30 in the afternoon. That's when I've seen the biggest mature bucks move, particularly when there is no moon or when there's a full moon. And that's
Hmm.
it's not just in Texas. That's an area that's Canada. I've been fortunate to hunt a lot of different states for whitetail, and that's when I've taken my biggest whitetail bucks as a whole is during that middle part of the day.
Wow. That's good. That's good information for the listeners right there. Take notes, folks. That's the mature deer, middle of the day, full moon or no moon. That's
That's
good
the way
knowing.
it's been where I've been. Now it may be different where somebody else is, but uh,
No, we see it the same here in New York. So, yep, yeah. I
mm,
wanna. I'm gonna switch gears one more time
okay,
on you.
so please do. This is fun.
Good. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
I'm loving it,
So,
Mike.
Winchester World of Whitetail,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Hunter's Life, and of course, hunting with Thompson Center. What I think initially drew me to you is you were the handgun guy. It was so intriguing to me that I just had never seen somebody hunting with a handgun, and I had gone muzzleloader, had gotten into bow and shotgun and rifle, and it inspired me to. I got a Ruger Blackhawk in
Perfect.
357 I hunted with for years, and started feeling like I was undergunned. And then last year, my dad gave me his 44 Magnum Super Blackhawk. I think that's what Super Blackhawk. Um, I was always fascinated with you as a handgun hunter. Where did that come from? How did you get involved with that?
I grew up during the time when cowboys were king. I grew up
Yeah.
in Texas where we had handguns around, and I grew up hunting with my dad. My dad ran coon hounds, and a lot of times it was just easier because of the thickets that we crawl through to have a handgun strapped at your side rather than trying to take a shotgun or 22 rifle because you couldn't hardly get through some of the things. So that was a contributing factor. And then of course, my heroes as a youngster were like Roy Rogers
Mm,
and Gene Autry and the list goes on and on and on and on kind of things and reading about some of the things that they had done and my father-in-law who was in law enforcement for 57 years always carried a handgun as well too. So when my wife Marianne and I started dating, he was very instrumental in getting me into help. I helped him with a lot of different projects back then, and got me into shooting handguns uh, to and teaching me how to shoot with handguns. And then, of course, a lot of his friends were old time sheriffs and Texas
mm,
Rangers and those kind of things. And I got to shoot a lot with those guys. But there was always that fascination with handguns in terms of hunting. I bow hunted a fair amount many years ago, and even wrote
mm,
articles for M.R. James when M.R. was the editor and honcho over at Bowhunter magazine.
mm.
But I learned something very quickly. Even back then, Bowhunter magazines paid $25 an article. I could write the same article and send it to another publication and get anywhere from $100 to $500 per article. And so all of a sudden it became an economic thing. And then again, I got to know some of the early guys who were involved in hand gunning, like uh, Millick. Bob used to was mainly making the TC contender popular, as was a gentleman who's long since passed away, Hal Swiggett. And these were friends of mine through some of the things I was doing in the early years of writing as well too. But to me, it was also the perceived challenge of having to get close. That's what I enjoyed about bow hunting and still do, is
Yeah.
that it is a relatively close range hunting situation with handguns. With your 357, I've shot deer with 357. I always limited myself to about 50 yards on those shots. With my 44 mags, I feel very comfortable out to at least 100. 454 Casull, I feel comfortable out to actually 150 because of how accurately those guns that I'm shooting now. And I'm still shooting Rugers every once in a while, still shooting some TC guns, the Encore and the Contender. But
Mhm.
here recently, I've really been hunting with the Taurus Raging Hunter revolvers
Yeah.
and got one
Yeah.
in 44 mag, 454 and 460, and a 357 as well too. And with those guns, shooting Hornady ammo and going back to, I mean, the Winchester World Whitetail, we did that. That was an extremely popular show years ago. But I've always been a big fan of Hornady ammo, and I pretty much exclusively that's what I shoot these days because I really like that company to begin with, and I really like the ammo, and I like the research that they're doing to come up with the ammo and the bullets and all those other kind of things. But the handgun thing is fascinating. It's like any other gun, though. It's where the barrel is pointed when the trigger is pulled is where the bullet goes.
Yeah.
And I mean, pure and simple. Whether it's a long rifle and it's got a 28-inch barrel, or it's a shotgun, or a 42-inch muzzleloader, it's where that barrel's pointed when you pull the trigger. That's where that bullet, for the most part, is going to go. And the same thing with those handguns. I used to get tickled years ago when I really was hunting a lot with the TC guns. I introduced the TC Encore in 1995, and
Yeah.
that's back when I was the shooting editor with Shooting Times, our hunting editor rather with Shooting Time, and I got to hunt a bunch of those and shot the first critter with it. We didn't when they did it, we didn't even know what the name of it was going to be, but I shot a moose there in Maine, and then in a
Wow.
308 with Hornady ammo, took it down to Colorado where I'd drawn a Shiras moose permit, shot a Shiras moose, and then shot a really nice 6x6 uh, uh, elk with it. And then Ken French, who was one of the honchos there at TC for many years, Ken called and said, "You need to send this handgun back." And I said, "Ken, I'm not going to send this gun back." I said, "I like this one, you know." And he said, "Well, you got to. We don't even have the specs off of it." So my agreement was uh, that I'd send it back, and he'd have to send me the first gun that came off the assembly line, if you will. And it just happened to
Yeah.
be in a 30-06. And so for years, I shot that Encore and with a lot of different other barrels, of course, too, but primarily with the 30-06. And where I was going with all this is I used to get tickled because I'd go to a hunting camp somewhere, and everybody, typically, particularly on guided hunts, everybody was required to shoot their guns before you go out to hunt, so the outfitter and guide could see if you could shoot accurately and how you handled your gun and all that kind of thing. And I'd wait till most everybody finished, and I drag out this 30-06 pistol and or handgun, and I could hear people snickering, and I could hear some, "I bet he couldn't even hit the backstop," and all those kind of stuff. Well, with that particular gun, I could shoot less than inch groups at 100 yards, and
Wow.
did in front of people. So that and it always tickled me because I shot better groups than they did with their fancy and expensive rifles with that 30-06 handgun.
Oh,
But it was a
wow.
gun, and of course I shot it a lot too. And
Yeah. Yeah.
anytime if you're going to be a good shot, you need to know your gun, your ammo, your optics, and you
Yep.
need to know your capabilities with it as well too. That's kind of where you
Yeah.
draw the line, going back to where we're talking about the what you feel comfortable with as far as the handguns and the 357, 44 mag, 454, 460, whatever it is.
Yeah. What are you using for optics on most, like, are you using a scope or a red dot or what?
I was doing a lot of stuff with the red dots and with the Trijicon SROs, and I'm shooting. What always amazed me, I was using a 2.5 MOA, which means at 100 yards, that dot covers 2.5 inches, and I'd shoot a 5 or 6 shot group out of the Taurus Raging Hunters, and from a good solid rest, I could shoot about an inch group. So I was shooting a tighter group than what I could actually see on the target. Now,
Mm.
here very recently, a couple of friends of mine, Mr. Edgar Cotton and his son David, who I hunt with a fair amount, have gotten to be really good friends with up in Northeast Texas. Uh, they have a range out to 500 yards, and they enjoy rifles as well. And they were out there shooting rifles not too terribly long ago, and I dragged out one of my handguns, and they said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to try to hit that 500-yard target." And with that red dot, with knowing what that bullet should do at 500 yards in terms of drop. But there's other factors that come into play, particularly wind at that distance, because that bullet's really slowing down and very
Yeah.
wind affected kind of thing. But I was hitting all around this 18-inch, 500-yard gong. And I mean, just right on the edges of it. So I came home and I pulled off some of my old quite frankly, some old Simmons and TC scopes that I had over the years that were 2.5 to 5, and put them on a couple of those 44 mags and in a 454, and with just a little bit of practice of getting to know exactly knowing mostly what that bullet's going to do at 500 yards. The last time we were playing with those, we were hitting the targets. If we're shooting a 5 shot cylinder revolver, we were hitting at least once out of every 5 shots. With the 44 mags, we were hitting at least twice out of every 6 shots that we were doing, and most of them were pretty much in the dead center. So, you know, there's a long range craze going on these days with people shooting rifles and developing different rifles and optics, and the ammo, the bullets have come a long, long way. But there's also something to be said about taking a 44 mag and shooting at 500 yards. Just using what most people would call Kentucky windage, or here being from Texas, we prefer to call it Texas windage.
Well, yeah. Wow. Wow. What, I don't this is a loaded question, right? If you
Whatever.
had one caliber, if you had one caliber you could shoot and that's it for the rest of your life.
Oh, that's if I had one caliber, it was a rifle, and I was going to hunt the world. And that includes, I've been very fortunate. I've shot everything from elephants down to blue diker in Africa. I've hunted in Australia with the same caliber. I've hunted alpine ibex and roe deer with the same caliber in Europe. Brown bear, African lion. Oh my gosh, elk, moose. All those other kind of things. Horny got together with Ruger a few years ago and developed the 375 Ruger. And
Mm,
that, to me, if I were told you can only have one round, I mean, one round that you shoot, one caliber, one rifle, it would be a 375 Ruger. With
wow.
it, you still producing, if you're into long range shooting, out to 700 yards, that those particular guns that I've shot, and those include those by Ruger and Mossberg both. Uh, those guns will shoot very reasonably accurately out to 700 yards with the available Hornady ammo that's out there right now, either in terms of the outfitter, and I've even played around with the 300 grain DGX and DGS solids out to that
Yeah.
distance, to where at 700 yards we're shooting about a 4-inch group with different optics as well. I've just started working with a new company as well too, called uh, uh, Stealth Vision out of Texas.
Mhm.
One of the finest hunting scopes that's also available for long range that I've ever seen. But uh, even out to 700 yards, you're still within a kill zone, easy kill zone, and there's still more than sufficient downrange energy to have that bullet expand properly and to very quickly and humanely kill that deer. And for a while, when I started hunting with that 375 Ruger, I also carried a 375 H&H mag,
Mm,
because no matter where you went in the world, you're going to be able to find 375 Holland and Holland Magnum. I mean, there's no question about it. But with all due respect to the folks at Hornady, they have done an absolutely fantastic job of getting ammo in that particular caliber and that particular round throughout the world. I've been in little podunk places and that's being almost kind to the place in Africa, and where they sold ammo or ammo was available, and there was 375 Ruger there. I've seen the same thing in Australia, and I've seen the same thing in
wow.
Europe, and throughout North America, and particularly in those areas where there's a tendency to have that opportunity to maybe take either dangerous game or truly big animals kind of thing. So no question
Wow.
about it. That would be the one round that I would use. And the beauty of it is, if you're going to be shooting the really small stuff, like I said, the smallest thing I've shot with it game wise has been a blue diker, which is about the same size as what your cottontails are up there. And
Mm,
there I could very easily switch over to 300 grain solid and you punch a hole through them and without doing that much damage to either the meat or the skin as well too. And then you got the other options as well with some of the other ammo that they have out there, particularly now in terms of their outfitter, which uses their CX bullet, and all of them shoot very, very accurately. One of the other things that's really nice about 375s, and particularly the 375 Ruger, is that it performs extremely well in relatively short barrels, talking about 20-inch barrels. So even
Mhm.
if you have a muzzle brake or you decide to put a suppressor on it, you're still going to have a barrel that's no longer probably in about 24 inches. And in a lot of situations, a shorter rifle, particularly hunting dangerous game, is very comforting knowing that you can swing that thing up to your shoulder and shoot rather than trying to
Yeah,
push it forward, push it back, or push it this way, push it there, get up to your shoulder to shoot kind of thing. And
yeah.
so for that reason, I like the 20-inch barrel type guns,
Yep.
and that's no question about the caliber and round.
Wow. That's wow. You know what? I don't know that I've ever shot that round, but I'm intrigued now.
And the recoil is not, people look at that shell or that cartridge and they go, "Oh my god, I bet it tears your shoulder off." No, 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 it's not really. It's relatively comfortable to shoot, and
Yeah.
particularly with the muzzle brake on it, or if you had put a suppressor on it, I mean, it becomes either one of those makes it shoot not a whole lot more than about a 308, maybe a 30-06 at the very
Wow,
most in
that's
terms
yeah,
of actual felt recoil.
not bad. Not
No,
that
not bad at all.
yeah. Wow. I'm gonna ask you 2 more questions, and then
Okay.
we'll wrap it up. So the first one, um, you have been involved in so many things. Uh, from wildlife management and all of your hunting history and travels. Do you have one thing that you hang your hat on and say, "That's the thing I'm most proud of"?
That's a very difficult question because
Yeah.
I've been so very blessed in so many different ways. I mean, the good Lord has been on my shoulder and pushed me in a lot of different directions, and there have been times I've gotten to the point where I go, "Oh my God, Lord, where do we go from here?" And He always has shown an avenue, He's opened a door. But
Yeah,
it also
yeah,
comes down to the fact that you have to open that door when it presents yourself.
yeah.
Probably one of there are probably two things that I'm mostly proud of, and one of them is back in 1985, we formed an organization called Texas Wildlife Association, and which was a group that we formed. I was one of the three founders and probably the primary founder of that, of landowners and hunters who have done a tremendous amount of things for Texas, and that organization serves as an example in a lot of other states. Among other things, we formed within that organization a group called the Texas used to be called the Texas Youth Hunters Association, our organization, and within that group, we have in the last not that terribly many years, taking something like 80,000 kids on their first hunts. And that which required the fact that they had to have a parent or guardian with them. And we've been very blessed with the fact that we are privately owned, and a lot of the private landowners saw the necessity of doing this, and saw it as a way of helping them take excess animals and all that kind of stuff. We've been very instrumental in uh, providing lessons and showing teachers how to teach the outdoors and to let people know in the school systems that hunting is a very important part of wildlife conservation.
Mm,
As in, I often say along those lines, conservation is life, preservation kills, and it really is that way. And that's something we try to parlay through the various many programs that we have. We also now have an adult program where we take adults hunting anywhere from if
mhm.
you're over 18 and you're even if you're in a wheelchair and you're 90 years old and you want to go hunting, by golly, we're gonna make sure you get to hunt, have a better understanding. So that organization, and it's Texas Wildlife Association, and people can go online, or it's www.texas-wildlife.org, and they can learn more about it, of a lot of things that we've done. And like we're in there, let's see, so that'd be like 38th or 39th year since we started that. The other is my association with the Dallas Safari Club with DSC. I've over the years had the opportunity to work with a lot of different conservation organizations, and to me, there's one that rises to the top no matter what the organization is, and that is DSC, with all the things that they do. So very often, DSC does a lot of things for hunters, for conservation, and they never ask for credit. A lot of times, other organizations are quick to jump on it. And say, oh, look what we did, but it was actually it was actually DSC that did a lot of that. And I've kind of served as an ambassador there for about the last many years, and hope to for continue to do so for a bunch more years. But to me, that is just the finest organization there is out there when it comes to anything having to do in North America or in the world as well too. And I would strongly encourage any and everybody that loves the outdoors, whether you hunt, whether you fish, don't let the safari part scare you, because safari is just a term. It's a Swahili term that means adventure, a walkabout,
Mhm.
something new that you try. So please don't let the safari thing, because I can assure you that the vast majority of our members have never been to Africa. And usually when
Yep.
somebody asks us, what does that DSC stand for? I said, that's the Dallas Squirrel Hunters Club, because we very much encourage hunting and time spent in the outdoors. And there are many facets to it as well, too, along with the
Mhm.
DSC Foundation that I served as a board member on for several years, and now serve as an advisor. And if you want to learn more about DSC, you can go to www.bigame.org. Or if you want to learn something about the DSC Foundation that we provide, we're kind of the granting arm of DSC, and we provide grants to extremely vetted organizations and individuals to help them with their research or to help them with any kind of wildlife problem they have. As long as it involves hunting, we'll do our best to try to support them, and they can do that by going to www.dscf.org as well too.
Okay. That was my second question was, I know that, your podcast is, your DSC campfires, and I knew you've had a long time association, and we don't hear much about it up here uh, in our Yankee land. So I was,
Well, what's interesting is for years, DSC split off of SCI back in 1982 or something like that. And DSC is now establishing chapters pretty much all over North America. And I'm trying to remember, I know that we have some chapters like up in Connecticut, and
Mhm.
a gentleman by the name of Bruce Borowski is our chapter guy. And Bruce has been establishing chapters pretty much at an unbelievable pace. And so if you don't have a chapter up in your part of in your state, and I suspect there'll be one coming there pretty quickly too. And again, anybody can learn more about the chapters again by going to the DSC website, the bigame.org website, and see if there's a chapter there locally as well. And like I said, we're gaining chapters like crazy all throughout the Northeast and the North Country.
Okay, good. I'll follow up with that, and I'll post
Please,
it, with the podcast as well.
thank
Where
you.
can, where can people follow you?
Oh my gosh, probably the easiest way is on Facebook, and I think there's a Instagram too, but it's just plain Larry Weishuhn on Facebook, and I think it's at Larry Weishuhn Outdoors or at Larry Weishuhn on Instagram. And then two, we recently established a new website, and where I post our the weekly DSC podcast that I do, a weekly TV show that I do with Luke Layton and Jeff Rice called Sportsman's Life that airs on Carbon TV and Gen 7 Outdoors. And then two, there's an opportunity there to purchase some of the two latest books that I've done. And also it's where I post a lot of blogs. I do anywhere from 4 to or more blogs every month for various companies like DSC and Hornady and a few of the others. And they can find those on their social media sites, but they can particularly find those as well on the LarryWeishuhn.net, all lowercase, just like my name, LarryWeishuhn.net. And I'd love for people to come visit. Before too very long, we'll have an email set up there to where they can contact me there as well too.
Hmm. Well, I've kept you longer than I said I would, and
I know you didn't. I appreciate it.
I feel like I could keep you for, years to come. This has been such a joy for me to be able to have this conversation with you and to just hear your stories. So,
And me as
thank
well.
you
I've
so
loved
much.
every moment.
Well, thank you. It's I think I told you in the email, I'm kind of as a fan to be able to talk to somebody who you've looked up for so long. It's just it's hard to hide that. But thank you so much.
I am truly honored. Thank you so very much.
Well, I appreciate it. And we will we'll keep in touch as the road goes and
Yes, sir.
shoot straight and enjoy those hunts.
I'm
So
going to. Mike, thank you so very much for letting me be a guest on your podcast. I truly, truly appreciate it. And hopefully we'll be able to do this again, maybe come closer to hunting season and kind of catch up to see where everybody's going.
that would be fantastic. Thank you very much.